Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horwitz. Hit me up on Twitter, NGH287, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content, the website, dsmsports.net, and also check out slyke.co, and of course, follow along with the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. We have a best of episode for you guys today. It's been a long time since I did one of these, and so I'm way overdue. Always a good way to catch up through the back catalog. We've been doing this for 11 and a half years almost now, so lots and lots of incredible interviews. Many are very timeless and have great principles and insights that you can carry on for days, months, weeks, and years to come. And we have a packed episode for you guys today. It is so good. I highly recommend all of these interviews in their totality, but you're going to hear about 10, 15, maybe a little more minutes of each of these interviews, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown, and then we'll get into it. So you're going to hear from 5 people today. First is going to be Austin Penny. He's with STN Digital. Then you're going to hear from Reese Carter, now with Sport Design Australia. He was with the National Rugby League when we originally spoke. Then after Reese, you're going to hear a little bit of my conversation with Anthony Yepes. He was then with bodybuilding.com. Now he's with the Pro Fighter League, just a really good, sharp guy in the space. Then you're going to hear from Erin Hodges. She is now with the Philadelphia Eagles and was then with the Colorado Rockies. Just one of the GOATs in social media and sports. Just a fantastic person. And then finally, rounding it out is going to be Wayne Partello with Quento. One of my favorite interviews, one of my favorite people. Just a ton of insight, a ton of energy, a ton of wisdom and knowledge. Just so much to learn from him. So let's get into it. First up, here is a few minutes with Austin Penny, now with STN Digital. He was there with STN Digital as well when we spoke. He has spent time with Auburn. We talk about his time with the Tampa Bay Bucks, how they really built out their content pillars and their brand and voice, what it was like as Tom Brady came in as a free agent there. Just lots of good stuff. So here he is, Austin Penny of STN Digital.
You know, everything that we did at Auburn was based around recruiting. I mean, at the end of the day, you're creating content to show what it's like to be an Auburn Tiger, really kind of give that 14 to 18-year-old the best insight of what it would be like if they came and played a sport and studied at Auburn. So that was our goal every single day, is how can we create content that's just going to show that. And when I transitioned over to the Bucks, we were so good at short form video with Auburn. That was one of the first things that I wanted to bring over to the Bucks, but we're not looking for recruits with the Bucks. We are very much revenue based. We're trying to create content that's going to, lock in the best engagement rate and grow off of, Twitter, and how are we going to be able to get, good numbers on our pre-rolls, even on YouTube. And, it's not necessarily about just growing platforms, but it's doing it the way that we know that we should. Are we putting out content that our fans are actually engaging with? And then to take that a step further, how are we locking in on the 14 to 18-year-old next crop of NFL fans?
Yeah.
Are we showing content that's resonating with them? So it went from recruiting to, okay, revenue. Let's do our best to create content, sell media, work with corporate partnerships to make sure that we're marrying the right content to the right partner. And then it's like, okay, how are we going to do our job so we can make sure that 10 years from now, we're still able to have a job because that next crop of fan is coming. So, and that's every professional sport, league, everything. They're looking ahead. And that's why you're seeing everybody so in on TikTok and so in on continuing to be on Snapchat and obviously Instagram for what it's worth. But yeah, that was the biggest change. And it happened fast, man. And I was very blessed because I had Christy Bedan, who's the VP of digital and media with the Bucks. She was so understanding of, hey, you've been in this space in college for a while and you're coming to a different world, even though it's still football. And she was always there to help me better understand what I needed to do for my job to do it the best way. So she was awesome. She really, really helped me grow in that role.
Yeah, it's a great way to sum it all up with all those different goals that you're trying to accomplish. And in college, it very much is like recruiting is number 1, number 2, number 3, and then maybe 4 and 5 are like Yeah, keep donors happy, ticket sales here and there, and activating our Fox College or our MMR partnerships. But yeah, it's definitely what the number one goal is. And on the pro side, it's everything related to revenue, which can mean a lot of things. It can mean creating fans of tomorrow. It can mean creating fans today. It could be driving ticket sales. It could be sponsorship, and still keeping fans engaged as well. I guess something I want to hear about a little bit is that brand. I think you know Auburn. You're gonna you're if you have a kid, your kid's first words are gonna be War Eagle, or maybe if he or she is in the room when you're watching the game too much, it might be War Damn Eagle. But but going to the Bucks, like, do you kind of have to understand this is the brand, this is the story that they're putting out there, this is who they want to be. There's a lot of ways to have success on social and in telling stories and creating engagement metrics that might be good to monetize, but they're not all created equally when you want to make sure you're doing so in a way that is true to the brand and the story that the Bucks want out there. So what was that process like to understand that and then ultimately articulate that and execute against that on the platforms?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate when I came into the Bucks. They were doing a slight rebrand in what they were wanting to be. They were kind of starting to put together what their pillars were going to be. We had fearless, we had being piratical and really taking advantage of our mascot and who we are. We had being heartfelt when we needed to be heartfelt. Those are really some of the top things that we were going after as a brand. And when you kind of look at those three, it's kind of not the best coupling because you don't want to be on one side like clapping back at trolls on social, but then you're putting a cool video out of a kid that is getting to meet his favorite football player, and you're doing a little bit more of, hey, let's share this smile right now. So
Right.
building that over time, we really started to get the hang of what our voice was and who we were. And we went into an approach where we were different on each platform, and not to the degree where we were a completely different brand or voice, but we were a little bit more of a pillar on each platform. On Twitter, we were way more engaging. We knew that we had to constantly be talking back to fans, not in a bad way, but talking back to fans and engaging with them, making them feel like they were a part of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. On Facebook, we started a Facebook group for our fans, and we would always be in that, engaging with them, giving them opportunities for giveaways and that type of thing. So we were a little bit more not necessarily reserved, but we were more appreciative, I guess you could say, as a brand. Mm-hmm. On Instagram, there was times where we were telling people to walk the plank because they were, clapping at us and saying how terrible of a game we had or how bad we were. And we're just like, hey, you know what? Whatever, we're coming after you at times. So we broke it down in a lot of different ways. So we always were in our pillars of what we wanted to be as an overarching brand, but we were a little bit flexible in which one of those pillars that we were, kind of putting at the top of the priority list per platform.
No, I think it makes complete sense. And speaking to different audiences and even just different ways that people function on a given platform and what they're expecting. And you can still be true to a North Star while shifting the tone of how you're speaking and how you're engaging and on an everyday basis as well. Did you notice, especially, I think it's cool for you to have that you were right there. And then this season they have this dream season and Tom Brady gets signed and it becomes I'm sure it was tough a little bit at times to watch from afar, but tell me, like, did you notice that as they got to be very successful and maybe got swag, like, one, is that something that you typically have seen in your career being at Auburn when you guys were winning versus when you were losing, and then seeing as a third party observer both internally and externally with the Bucks? Is there a shift in strategy and opportunity and tone when the team is riding high? And Auburn knows it's a share of roller coasters as well when it comes to wins and losses.
Oh yeah, the neck hurts from the different peaks and valleys, no doubt about it. I will say from the Bucs standpoint, we started out as being more of a underdog, chip on our shoulder. We were, kind of picking our fights and or battles, whatever, on social when we wanted to. But even as I was starting, when I was ending my time there, we were transitioning our brand even before the Bucs had all these crazy signings with Mike or with Tom, and Gronk and, Lenny Fournette, all those guys before they got there, we were transitioning our brand to be a little bit more of a luxury brand. We have a very nice facility. We have a really cool stadium. We want to give our fans the best experience that they can have when they go there. When they go to a game, we want to make them feel like they are investing their money in a worthwhile experience. And we just kind of wanted to feel like we were almost a Mercedes in the NFL. And when that started, we're figuring out what our look's going to be and what our pillars are going to be. Then you start to have these signings where you're getting Tom, you're getting these guys, and the hype is starting to build. And then you're rolling out this new brand. And you can see it from last kind of February into April, the brand transition, along with the jersey change. That's kind of what helps spur that on. And then you get a brand that is high class. You get a brand that's really focused on the customer service side. And look how cool we are. Look, you want to be a part of this. You definitely want to be a part of this. Look, we're winning now. But even as an outsider looking into last season when training camp was starting, throughout the season as they were winning games and they were beating teams that they haven't beaten in a long time. And then, these huge stats are starting to pop up, and then you go into the playoffs and then you beat Green Bay, and then you all these things start falling into place. And then at the end of it, you win a Super Bowl, and this brand that you have hoped that you would have is there, and it's really living there, and it's exactly what you wanted. Now, I will say, winning solves all of your problems. So anytime that you are winning, everything is accelerated 2 times. Everything is going great. You don't really have a lot of issues that pop up. Your content is gold, every single thing that you throw out there. So that definitely helps it, but they had the perfect storm last season to transition into that new look and feel and who they were on social. And so winning that Super Bowl, that's the king of luxury right there. So they were all over it, and they knocked it out of the park.
I love that. I love that perspective too of building a brand that fans want to be part of, that is desirable, and then it becomes something that brands or corporate partners can latch on to as well, and makes it that much more monetizable from a digital and social platform perspective as well.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's the most important thing that we could do with the Bucks, is figure out a piece of content that we knew was going to be super cool on social, that would really have a wide ranging, engaging, series or a franchise that we could put out, and then accompany it with the right partner. And by the end of my time there, that's what I had so much of my focus on. And by the end of my time there, me and corporate partnerships were best friends. I was like, yeah, here's 4 ideas that we could do that we would be great for lens crafters, or, all that type of stuff. So that is one of the most important things for sure.
No, I love that. A quick anecdote related to that, I guess, and then I want to move on to a couple other things as well. I had a recent podcast guest on from the Bulls, Joe Pinchin, who's the manager of digital content there, and he gave some good insight, saying how don't think of sponsors and partners as a burden, like, oh, we got to do the sponsor content. It's an opportunity. It's it lets you think of crazy cool ideas that you may not be able to do unless it was sponsored, and unless it does find the right sponsor to go with it. So you can look at it from one angle or the other, but if you choose to look at the opportunistic angle, it becomes a lot more palatable in that case.
Dude, that is exactly right. And coming from the college space where I wasn't necessarily working on that as much, that just really wasn't in my role, to then moving into that with the Bucks, and over time understanding that it's just a part of growing in the social side. You're, as a social media manager, most of the time you're like, I just want to make rad content, I want to get cool, I want to go viral, I want to have all these cool things. It's like, well, the bread and butter to this whole thing is making money and doing it the right way, and partnering with people who share the same beliefs and whatever about the culture and just there. So we put such a huge emphasis on that. By the end of my time there, we were in such a good place, and partners were coming to us instead of us having to seek them out. So that's 100% right on.
I love that. I really liked hearing about how about the Bucks Facebook group as well that you started speaking to. And heck, I think back to when my man Jeff Neal was there, and this is before your time, and they were I think among the early teams that did like, I want to say like DM meet and greets when that was like a small fad with like season ticket holders. They had like a player going in the Twitter DMs. But no, I kind of bring that up, but it's cool that deeper engagement element with your diehard fans. And I kind of want to hear how you look at that from an Auburn lens as well, where yes, you have the fans that are all over the subreddit that are calling into the Feinbaum show, that cannot get enough Auburn content. But then to your point, you are every day focused on, we got to make sure we're reaching the 14, 15, 16-year-olds that are going to be the recruits or the applicants of tomorrow. While also, yes, we have these diehard fans. We have these folks that are season ticket holders, that are donors, that are, constantly talking about us and driving conversation. So I guess first off, on a platform side, whether you're with the Bucks or with Auburn, are you looking out for those platforms where the young people are residing? And then how do you ultimately think about dividing your time and resources among, hey, we want to make sure we are deeply engaging these diehard fans because they are our evangelists, but we also need to split some X% of time to focusing on the fans or applicants or recruits of tomorrow?
Yeah, it's crazy how those two separate, and how at the end of the day they're both at the Bucks and at Auburn. They're both important to be looking at your diehards, but it's so different. I mean, it's just such a different world, because with the Bucks, you want to continue to drive that fan engagement and be there for them and know that you've got their back and that you're excited and proud to have them as a fan of your team. So you're putting a little bit more time and effort into it, because that is such a huge deal to have your season ticket holders know that you love that they're coming to the game and they're buying season tickets and they're bringing their friends, and then their friends become season ticket holders. And, you want them to, trash talk another fan base and be like, your team doesn't do this for y'all. If you're I'm not going to call any teams out, but if you're like a so-and-so fan and you as a Bucks fan, you literally have a pipeline directly to your team where you're actually conversating with them. You feel like you really are a part of the organization. So that's why we put so much time and resource on that. Shout out to Jill Beckman for really going in on that and helping grow that thing. She was a rock star and helping get that going. And it's funny that you asked that about Auburn, because Josh Wetzel and I at Auburn had talked about creating a fan page for Auburn. But Neil, what college fans are on a whole different planet. And I love the passion and everything that goes into college sports and college athletics, but it is almost impossible to govern a fan base on Facebook. Yeah. There is no telling how that would go, especially knowing they're taken care of in a lot of ways because of 24/7 Sports or Rivals. Mm-hmm. They have a message board and they have moderators there, and they have people that are reporting on the team unbiasedly and giving them information and that kind of thing. So they're a little bit more taken care of than the pro fan. The pro fan has Reddit and maybe a couple of beats that have message boards. So they're kind of taken care of on the college side. Pro side, we were all in on it. We wanted to do everything we could to be there for them.
Awesome stuff from Austin Penny. Just highly recommend that full interview. Continuing to learn and watch him as he continues to grow in his career, doing some great stuff for the STN Digital. Thanks so much to Austin, and look forward to more good chats in the future. But next up on the Best of the Digital and Social Media Sports podcast, you're going to hear some of my chat with Reese Carter. I am so glad to have Reese in my life. I've continued to maintain a friendship relationship with him. He was with the National Rugby League when we spoke, the NRL, down in Australia. Since then, he has now gone on to found Sport Design Australia alongside a few other great people. They do fantastic work, raising the bar, helping to really raise up everything going on in design, in creative, in Australia, and really all over the world. So here you're going to hear him talk about what it was like at the NRL at the time, how they made the most of their limited resources, getting buy-in for social and creative resources, making the most of their tentpole events and prioritizing those. So here he is. Hear a bit of my conversation with Reese Carter.
I think Clubland particularly is quite under-resourced. Which is unfortunate. I think there are a couple of teams that do it really well and really resourced well. But I think we're still quite a while behind, say the States in terms of resourcing, understand the power of social. I think, budgets are quite low, and I know in clubland there's quite a lot of turnover or burnout, which is tough. So you might have a social media team at a club for a season or two, but no doubt it'll be a new set of staff in 2 or 3 years. So it's really hard to sort of form relationships with a lot of the clubs because there is such a high churn through of talent. There's a few clubs that probably, like the Melbourne Storm, are probably the best in terms of their structure of their social team. They've sort of got a head of the social and brand marketing type role, but they've got a video editor, they've got a set of graphic designers, they've got some producers. Whereas a lot of teams, there's a lot of people just wearing multiple hats. They might probably have 2 people that work across website, video design, social producing live game coverage. So it's pretty full on. And that's just from being in clubland myself and learning from experience. You don't have a lot of support, and you seem to be working, as you do in social media, really hard 24/7, both during and the off season. In terms of the NRL setup, we got to a point pre-COVID last year where we're in a really good spot. We had 8 staff within the social media team, sort of right across from our social lead to myself, sort of managing the content output side of things, working with designers, video editors. So we had a video editor, some producers, and a couple of casual staff that would work across the weekend as well on live game coverage, but we took a bit of a hit. So we're at about 4 staff now. So there's myself, a head of social casts, and then a couple of producers, which is tough. It's really hard to do a good job and manage all of the channels correctly. I think we don't even have a video editor within our social team. We rely on the NRL.com team for any video requests that we need, and we have to really think in advance and plan in advance with them to be able to get the content that we need to push out at certain times of the year. So, for now, basically at the moment, we're planning our off season, what content we need for our off season with the NRL.com team. And even those guys themselves are quite under resourced. So COVID hasn't been too kind to us, nor has it been kind to, a lot of businesses. We've taken a bit of a hit there. So we've sort of had to focus more on the bigger picture than churning out a lot of content, which is probably a good thing anyway. But that's where we sort of sit at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you and I kind of both got into the space around the same time when social was first becoming a thing. I mean, you at the Sharks and me out here in the States, and back then social was more of a curiosity. Yes, it's nice. We don't really know how it fits into the business quite yet. For some, it was communications. For some, it was a marketing tool. For some, it was a combination. So, what has held back? Or I guess, what is the buy-in like for social in Australia in general, and as well as at the across the clubs for the NRL? Is it still like a battle where you're like, hey, social can drive revenue, fan engagement does help create fans, drive ticket sales, drive merchandise, or is it still kind of thing where it's social is a throw-in, and social is something that we do in addition to everything else we do? It's just kind of where does social fit in kind of that strategic mindset? Is it elevated in the way that it's becoming more elevated here in the States?
Yeah, I think it's slowly getting to that, but I think we're quite a while away. I think it's still definitely a battle for our team, just to get staff on board. The fact that our social team doesn't have a video editor alone. A video editor alone is speaks for where we're sort of at. Right. Graphic design, we have a designer who we have access to, probably 80-90% of the time, but they don't sit within our team. So I think it probably depends on what business or you're sort of talking about or what team, but I think as a whole, social is probably an afterthought for a lot of businesses and executives still, which is unfortunate. It's a constant education process. I think there are quite a lot of people that do understand the importance and value of a solid content or social media strategy, but there's definitely a lot of clubs or executives or teams that don't quite understand the value of it. And I'm not sure what. I think that's purely based out of, not being as educated, or, they haven't been brought up in a world of social. So it's not something that they probably think is as important as, say, the traditional marketing side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that. Do you guys look at the states, look at EPL clubs? And yeah, you may not have the resources of an NBA team or league or a Premier League team or league, but do you guys look to them, or you look at clubs that are, whether it's in Australia or at a lower level that are maybe more equal to you in terms of resource?
Yeah, no, or on a personal level, I definitely look at the States. I keep an eye on, what teams and leagues and clubs do, but I probably myself follow more the creators themselves. So I'll follow, a bunch of graphic designers, a bunch of motion designers, a bunch of illustrators, a bunch of video editors, all from across the States, where I don't really mind what team they're from. Like, if I see a good piece of content on, particularly Twitter, that's probably where I find a lot of my inspiration and look to. I really try and cherry pick what each team does best and basically bring it all together from each team to form, a pretty holistic sort of strategy for our social. We're fortunate we have got, we have had some decent sort of budget over the last couple of seasons where we have been able to use freelancers, freelance creators, and agencies and all that sort of thing. I probably lean towards more freelancers than agency, just out of a cost,
Right.
because agencies do cost quite a little bit. So I'll work with, if I like a designer or see a designer on Twitter that I like, I literally reach out to them and hit them up and see if they're interested in doing some freelance work with us. So I've got a little bit of a pool of guys that I work with, depending on what piece of content I want created, which is nice. So yeah, I definitely look towards states and in particular, and not just the elite level. College. There's a lot of amazing college creators as well, which are great. So yeah, that's where I look to for my inspiration, and I form lists and lists on. I've got a list on Twitter of social creatives and marketing sort of talent. Basically that I follow and that anyone can follow. It's public, so
Yeah.
I basically add anyone that pops up that works at in Clubland or for a team or whatever. I'll add them to that and just sort of keep an eye on that list. And I use bookmarks quite a lot as well. So if I like something that an idea or a piece of content that I think might work down the track for something else, or I can put my own spin on it, I'll bookmark it and save it for later. I probably need to get the paid version of bookmarks, because I've got that many. I sort of get lost in them now.
There you go. That's one reason to get Twitter Blue, I think it's called, right?
Yeah, Twitter Blue. But I mean, look, from when I first started in 2015, we only had a digital and social media manager, which was Matt Henry. I'm not sure if you may know or have heard of him. He's probably one of the smartest and most knowledgeable guys in the digital sporting landscape in Australia. And then we had one community manager or producer who actually worked with that in agency land. So in terms of headcount, there was really only 3 of us in 2015 that managed social right across the board. So internal structure was still pretty, the bare bones, but we worked with an agency called VML as well for a couple of years there, just to help us out with resource, particularly around, I guess, our tentpole moments or major events, particularly State of Origin, which I'm not sure if you've heard of State of Origin, but
totally.
Yeah, that's basically Australia's greatest sporting rivalry, biggest sporting rivalry. It's Queensland versus New South Wales, state v state. It's a 3-game series that sees the best players in each state play against each other during the middle of the season. It's kind of like an All-Stars concept, but it's it means a lot more to the players. It's a lot more intense. There's a genuine hatred for each other. And the event's been around for 30 years now. It's that one sporting event that even if you don't follow NRL or rugby league, people will still watch it with their mates. I think a big part of that's due to it's quite an aggressive, brutal type of game. It's just a different level to the NRL. It's just that next step up where it's the best v best. It's just a different beast. And although I mean, it's still aggressive, but people would definitely tune in because there was some sort of like brawl or fight that would break out, and fans just go nuts for it. And I get, yes, State of Origin. It's still the highest rating television show every year on free to air, including non-sporting programs. So that's sort of where it sits within Australia. It's just that, and internally we're probably not meant to say it, but State of Origin is seen as the pinnacle, seen by the players probably as the pinnacle of rep footy. It's much bigger than, I'd say, international rugby league. And if a player had to choose whether they played for Australia or in State of Origin at present, I reckon a lot of them would probably say Origin, as crazy as that sounds. Australia, obviously, it's very prestigious and honourable to play for your country. And I definitely think a lot of players would still probably say Australia over state, but I reckon a majority of them would say Origin. It's just got that. It's just a different breed of game. And honestly, if Americans knew more about NRL or even State of Origin, they'd go nuts for it. It's the NFL on roids with limited breaks. It's pretty full on.
Oh, that's the kind of stuff that folks working in content and social, that's why a ton of fun, because you get all the great storylines and great highlights and content. That sounds like one of the key tentpole events, along with others as well. So I kind of want to use that as a way to look at when you are looking at some of those awesome creatives in the States or elsewhere, from your curated list and bookmarking stuff as you go, and you need to decide, hey, this is a really cool motion graphic, or I really love this design, or this is a cool video concept. And you have to then look at, do we have the time? Do we have a budget for a freelancer? This is what, how do you determine, hey, here's a cool motion graphic that we could use for the opening of the season or for the grand final? And what goes into those decisions of, this is worth the time it will cost, or this is worth the budget it will cost? How do you make those decisions on where you can innovate, where you can spend more time and resources on your content?
Yeah, it's a good question. We get, obviously, Cass, our head of social, sort of sets a budget, and I'll sort of lean on her to get an understanding of what I've got to work with. I'm basically the one that will decide where the money goes, I guess. So, if I've got 40K, then, I'll break that down to say, let's work with, so-and-so on this motion piece or illustration piece. So I'll try and brief in or work with our internal designer on a lot of the everyday BAU type work that is quite straightforward and doesn't need a whole lot. Or it's probably easier for someone that understands the game to work on that sort of stuff with constant changes and stuff. But then it's really up to me what I sort of, we'll brainstorm ideas and what we want to do, and then we'll go from there. And if I've got 10K to spend on a motion design, I'll set out what we can actually use that on, whether it's a kickoff graphic, whether it's a game day graphic, whether it's a series of head-to-head graphics or wallpapers. I'll just sort of divvy that up into different sections, from illustration, motion, general graphic design, cartoon character type work. And go from there. But
are you almost like checking off in your head, like, hey, this is something that we'll be able to use multiple times? I mean, we can turn it into a bit of a template, or this is something we'll be able to use around this event, around this event, and just making sure that you're kind of getting the bang for your buck, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. If like we want a suite of graphics, like it's very rare that I'll brief in sort of one ad hoc random graphic, unless it's probably like an illustration or a cartoon character type piece of content. So if I do work with a freelancer, I'll give them a suite of graphics. So they might work on, say for State of Origin, there's 3 games, so they'll work on the 3 game day graphics. They'll then work on a head-to-head sort of player focused stats type graphic. They'll do the full-time template. They will do the champions type illustration or graphic as well, so that they'll have a suite that they sort of work to, and I just sort of flash that out within Google Docs in a spreadsheet, and then allocate what we'll do internally versus what we'll do externally.
Yeah. Like with these days too, there's such a demand for for content across platforms, and you have like stuff that is, yeah, you can maybe repurpose a graphic from Twitter to IG stories if you just change the specs a little bit or whatnot. But when you mentioned like having not as many people to do video, not as many resources on a match day. So like, does that require you to be really, I guess, thoughtful about, hey, we maybe can't prioritize TikTok as much because we're going to get more bang out of Instagram, and that's what we can service? Or like how do you ultimately divvy up resources across platforms, and how does that relate to ultimately like how you look at the success of your strategy?
Yeah, I think we've got more of a collaboration approach with the whole business now. So we'll work really closely with, say, marketing and events. So if we've got some animations that we'll want to put out, someone scores a try, we'll use, obviously the events team will use animations on the big screen. So how do we work with them to recreate, a 4x5 or a 9x16 on our platforms? And how that sort of translates onto social. So instead of creating a whole new animation or motion graphic for just social, we'll work with the events team on how that looks on the big screen, and then how we can showcase that on social as well. So we're not doubling up essentially on resource or budget.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's the same with the marketing team. We'll sort of work on, they've got their sort of own designer, so we'll work with them on what the marketing sort of team can do for us, what they need, and then how that also translate onto social and where we can use that. And so too, we've got our own set of graphics. So, what we design, we'll pass on to the marketing team, potentially with a different spin for any of their paid stuff or digital billboards or that sort of stuff. And then we'll also pass it on to the NRL.com team. They might want to include a graphic within a story, or use it as their hero image on a story as well. So it's due to COVID and the lack of resources we have now, or I shouldn't say lack of, limited resources we have. There's a lot more of a collaboration approach across different teams, so we can save time and not double up on resource and money essentially.
Fantastic stuff with Reese Carter, now with Sport Design Australia. Highly recommend you guys check them out. They have their own podcast now, The Art of the Game. You may have heard my episode on there. We put it in this feed. Just doing great stuff there. Subscribe to their newsletter. Follow along with Reese. Just awesome stuff, and a great guy. Next up on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, another person I've known for a while, and everywhere he goes, he brings it. This guy has such a good insight and really instinct into the social media space, into community building, into influencer marketing. He's been doing it for so long and has continued to get better and better and growing along with the industry, setting the trends, setting the standards. This part of my conversation with Anthony, you're going to hear about what it was like at the time he was at bodybuilding.com, building community, being that early mover in influencer marketing, understanding your audience, all these really key principles Anthony was doing before it was really table stakes, and he has really again set the standards. Does a great job. He's now with the PFL, the Pro Fighters League, doing good work there. So listen up. Here's a few minutes with Anthony Yepes.
Yeah, I think it was a couple things. Graphic design, video editing, photography, all that stuff. I think those are skills you got to have. As someone in social media. But I think what really helped me grow was kind of like cutting through the noise of, wanting things to go viral, or, just looking at things from a perspective of my own versus looking at what the community needs, what's important for, the followers that are fans of the brand, right? Like thinking from their point of view, from their perspective, and also communicating with them and just going out, doing social listening, being obviously Spartan, an on-site event, being at events and talking with people, and then just seeing how a brand connects with a consumer and giving them exactly what they want. I think a lot of people in social get stuck in the, hey, we need to hit engagement numbers, we need to hit KPIs, whatever it takes, even if it doesn't make sense, or if something's trending, let's put this thing out on social because that's going to help us hit our numbers. So I think for me, what's helped me in my career is, yes, there's always going to be that element, but the closer you can be to the consumer and speak from their tone of voice and relate to, where they're coming from and what they need, the more successful you'll be, right? I think that's what's another cool thing about what we're doing here at bodybuilding.com is that I try not to overcomplicate things, right? It's what you need to hit a goal. It has a very kind of like specific framework to it, right? So as the brand, you have to make sure that you're consistently giving your audience things around those, what we call content buckets. And for the consumer, their framework that's going to help them hit that goal. So I think for me in my career, that's been the biggest thing that helped me grow, is just I'm always looking at things from the consumer's point of view, not, and I don't know if this sounds crazy or not, but I'm not looking at it from the brand point of view. I have the consumers and the audience's best interest in mind at all times.
Love that. It's a thoughtful and smart way to put it and to look at it, and guides us a lot. And when you are oftentimes straddling that line between trying to hit numbers by any means necessary and doing what your consumer, your audience actually wants you to do. So I loved hearing, and we'll get more into it as well, about how much effort you put into really understanding your audience, especially when you started, this past year at bodybuilding.com. So that'll be fun to get to. I do want to pick your brain a little bit about the early days of influencers and ambassadors. I mean, it seems like, the last 3-4 years, maybe even less than that, everyone's been talking about influencers and certainly creators as well. But if you look at all the e-marketer graphs, all the plans to increase spend in influencer marketing are going up and to the right, of course. So take me back though to the quote unquote earlier days when you were with Cogent, when you were starting out with Spartan Race and their influencer programs. What did influencer campaigns look like then? How did you find influencers? Like take us inside what it meant to do influencer marketing then, and maybe how you've seen it evolve to more modern times.
Yeah, I think, back a couple of years ago, I mean, this is 7 years ago, maybe, or so. Celebrities were pretty much your influencers, right? Anyone that had major clout within a certain industry, whether it was entertainment or music or television or media, that was typically the way that, influencers were leveraged and the way that they were identified, and from past experience, it's, a lot of the brands who wanted the attention that those influencers had for their brand, you needed big budgets, right? Like you needed a couple hundred, 6-figure budgets, if not millions of dollars, to get some of these celebrities to work with you and create content or show up at your event, and do a red carpet thing. So I think that was where it was. And obviously I think we've all seen over time that that's changed a lot. Some now, I think the biggest thing, and something that I did at Spartan, was finding micro influencers, right? People that have influence with their audience and their community, and even at a smaller level, but of higher return, right? So like someone with maybe 1,500 followers still can be a micro influencer, still has, influence on a group of people, but maybe it just has a larger impact. They're getting higher engagement, their engagement rate's higher, their group of people trust what they're putting out in front of them because, they know that person on a personal level, and, they take what they say seriously. So, I think from Spartan to where I am now at bodybuilding.com, still using that same thought process, right? Like numbers to me, as far as followers, great. If you have a lot of followers, that's awesome. But if your engagement rate is low, that's not going to be helpful, right? So it's more looking for those people that have a really engaged audience, make great content, and they understand the process. Like for us, and I think a lot of people around, having content is not easy, or finding content is not easy, and creating content is not easy. So with influencers that really understand it, it's been super valuable to tap into them. I'm actually in the middle of a campaign right now where we tapped about 15 micro influencers for some of our products and some of the campaigns that we have going on. And it's incredible to see, how much influencer marketing has grown in a very high valuable standpoint with everyday average people versus, A-list celebrities.
there's so much good stuff in that. I mean, and to your point, there on the content side, toward the end of your answer there as well, we oftentimes, or maybe not we, but too often there's how many sales of this influencer post drive, or if even affiliate came in, and there's so much more to it there where, if an influencer is creating content, that is extremely valuable in and of itself, because otherwise you are paying someone else to create content for you, or you're going to an agency or doing an elaborate shoot or whatever it might be. So like that's value right there. And then especially when you get to the micro influencer level, it's someone that knows the audience that you're trying to reach, and they're not just some major celebrity with a very broad audience. Sometimes you want that, sure, but if you know the audience you're trying to reach and you can connect to someone that connects with that audience, then I mean, shoot, if you can convert 10% of their audience versus 0.1% of a larger audience, which is more effective? It's not a black and white answer. So there's so much interesting stuff there. And yeah, do you guys look at it that way? Even at bodybuilding.com or at Spartan Race, of, what's all the different ways we can activate this influencer, whether it is through a direct sale, through an email capture, through help us co-create content with us. Are you trying to look at like what's a 360-degree influencer campaign look like today?
Yeah, like I don't know if my approach is different than other people or not, but the way that I see it working best with influencers or content creators is, I like to use the term content creator instead of influencer. But the way that I see it working best is, hey, each creator has their style. They have their personality. They have the way that, they approach it. Let them be creative. Give them the flexibility to be who they are, but inject your brand into their process, right? So, I try not to like say, here's a very detailed script of how I need you to activate this campaign, and I need this product placement here. I feel like when that's how the relationship is formed, you lose a lot of authenticity there. And for me, it's all about keeping things super real and as organic as possible, right? I mean, even in this campaign that we're running now, I think sometimes people are like, hey, like, do you want me to, show the label or do this, do that? I'm like, don't go away from what works from you, right? Like, you built your brand and your social because of your creative mind. Just find a way to inject our brand. Obviously, there's some things that you have to make sure happen within the content process, but be who you are. You're super flexible, and just have a great time creating the content.
Yeah, I mean, it ends up being a better outcome for everyone, for the creator, for the audience, especially nowadays where an audience is looking to sniff out any scent of inauthenticity. And so you want to avoid that. And yeah, I mean, just perfectly said around, giving the creator the autonomy to do what they do, because there's a reason that they have gained all those followers and being able to make a living out of creating content. So very well said. I want to hear about Spartan Race, because you were there for 4 years, did a great job, building their brand on digital, on social. But I guess for our listeners, give us the quick Spartan Race 101. Tell us what we need to know about Spartan Race, and then we'll kind of dive in a little bit deeper there.
Yeah, I mean, during my time there, the brand was really gaining in popularity. At that time, I believe maybe in a couple different countries, and US was our dominant country, at that time. And then, over the years expanded to over 40 different countries, and just, I think, over a couple million racers per year. And like I said, working with Facebook Live and ESPN, broadcasting some of our major events, the World Championships, and then having different championships in different regions of the world, and just bringing everyone together. When I was there in Lake Tahoe for 3-4 years for the World Championship, and having everyone out there being a part of that whole weekend, basically like the Super Bowl of obstacle course racing. So I mean, the big thing about Spartan while I was there was the community aspect, right? And this goes back to what I was saying about the social listening and really engaging with your community, and that's how you win on social. So, during my time, that was a big focus for us and a big driver for the success of the brand. People really,
Anthony, so Spartan Race is just because I want to get a full picture as well. It's a combination where there are amateurs participating at events, but there's also a professional and championship aspect.
absolutely.
Kind of the
Yeah. So the premise of Spartan Race, obstacle course, ranging from three different main lengths. So sprint, super, beast. So basically like a 5K, 10K, and half marathon, I believe. So where average people, anyone, all different age groups can go out and test themselves against each of those distances. And the whole objective is to earn your trifecta, which is getting a medal from each of those individual races. Then along the course, you have anywhere from 20 to 30 obstacles that kind of really test your full body strength, and then also your mental strength and endurance as well. So yeah, that's the premise of it. There's the amateur version, and then there's the professional athlete version, though, who people who dedicate their lives and their training to being the best, and both on the male and female side, who competed separately and competed in a series of races throughout the year and qualified for national series, and then went on from there to world championships.
Gotcha. So it's someone that is certainly and the monetization streams, I guess, are events and maybe online and sponsorships.
Right.
That's sort of the business model.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that changed since I parted ways, but yeah, it's sponsorship and ticket sales from those that participated in the race were two of the major focuses for the brand. So
tell me then about when you were looking at developing that social strategy and that community strategy. What did it mean to build a community for Spartan Race? Was it a community of competitors? Was it a community of people that enjoyed this lifestyle, that aspired to compete? Like who was that audience, and how did you go about connecting them?
Yeah, I mean, it was a combination of both, right? I mean, it wasn't like your traditional, let's say, major sport where the big time athletes are everything for the brand. It was a heavy mixture of the everyday average person and their stories, and what they needed in order to to feel confident about taking on this major goal, right? Like the races that they competed in, they understood how hard it was going to be, and the amount of pride that goes into signing up, showing up, getting through the race, and completing it was insane. I mean, people would tell you amazing stories of how they overcame a lot of difficult things in life because of the brand and what the brand kind of instilled in your mind, which made it really, really cool to put together a social strategy for that, right? Because it's not just about running and jumping and climbing and throwing things. It was about everything that happens before you get there. And so being able to tell those stories of those people, then also obviously still focusing on the fun aspect, right? And the challenging aspect of the obstacles themselves and the courses, and doing a lot of behind the scenes work. But where we spent a lot of our time and that we really appreciated was sitting down with these community members. We were working with a company called Airstream to have those big silver trailers. Have you ever seen those before?
Yeah.
And we had a interview series that we developed with them, sitting down inside the trailer. They were set up on site at some of our races, and just sitting down, asking questions, and just getting to know people, and the emotions that would come out. People just being full tears, telling us their story of how they overcame alcohol abuse, drug abuse, domestic violence, like just every kind of struggle that you can think of. People from all walks of life will come in and become part of the the Spartan community. So yeah, I mean, just being a part of that kind of approach to social is incredible, right? I think you see that a lot with some of these brands that are really about lifestyle and culture, not just about a product or a sale. You know what I mean? So
totally,
that was really awesome. And then like being able to take that experience and that framework and bring that here to bodybuilding.com, that shares a pretty similar audience in the sense of They're very passionate. They're very goal oriented. And everyone is doing this for a very important reason to them. And you as a brand have the responsibility to, one, give them all the tools and resources that they need. And then two, celebrate those people and tell those stories and let other people see, like, you're not alone. There's people just like you that are going through this, and they're getting through it. They're changing their life. They're losing that weight. They're getting that muscle. They're becoming stronger mentally and physically. And you can do it too.
Fantastic stuff with Anthony Yepes. Continue to follow along with his career. Check out what he's doing with the Pro Fighters League. They do a great job overall there with social, and Anthony is there leading the charge nowadays. Next up on the Best Updates in Social Media Sports podcast, one of my BFFs in the SM sports space and just overall. I've known her for so many years. She is still so young, but somehow a GOAT in the space already. Just amazing stuff. You're going to hear a few minutes of my chat with Erin Hodges. At the time we spoke, she was with the Colorado Rockies. Now she's doing her thing with the Philadelphia Eagles. She is just a freaking rock star. She has a great instinct, a great gut feel for all this stuff. She is a great leader, a great person, and in this part of my chat, we're going to hear about developing these social media skills and instincts, what it's like to do that. Also, at the time when she was the Rockies, starting that TikTok from scratch and really figuring out, understanding how it could be used to humanize the players, get buy-in, get trust, developing their voice overall at the Rockies and their brand, now doing, again, good things with the Eagles. So here she is. Hear a bit of my conversation with Erin Hodges.
Yes, I got 7. If you think about this, like, there were 7 internships there, right? Like, that's a lot, and that's really great. But the amount of no's that I got along the way too, people don't talk about that enough. Like, they'll look at me and they'll be like, "Oh, you got so many opportunities. You had so many yeses." And I'm like, yeah, but you're not seeing the 500 no's, or like the companies I didn't get to work for that, like, I thought I could work for, thought I had the experience for, or the amount of interviews or the amount of people and networking that I did for even just like getting certain interviews or being able to put my resume in front of people, or just discussions and actually, making friends with people. Like, nobody ever sees that work. They only see, cool, you had 7 opportunities. And if I could give a lesson to anybody in college, it's, 1, don't be afraid of the no's. Go apply for those things, because guess what? You're going to get a no, but someone's going to say yes to you. Someone's going to give you that chance, but you're never going to get that chance if all you're scared of is a no.
Totally.
So yeah, go after it. Find random skills that you want or that you see are opportunities, AKA go look at a job description of what you hope to do one day. Yeah. What are the things you need? And then from there, build out. That was the one thing I did, and I think it really helped me a lot.
That's one of my favorite things to tell people. I'm like, there's a cheat sheet. It's right there for you. And
they're going to be, I guarantee you, it's going to be in different areas. Again, I didn't just stay in social because I thought I wanted to do social media marketing. That encompasses a million different things. And so likely it's not going to be you just sitting and running Twitter all day. It's going to be you finding those different areas. And then that's where you're going to get the easier yeses too along the way for those internships. Because it might not be something that's just, it's a social media internship, but maybe it's something a little bit different or a smaller area.
And I think, and I want to certainly hear about your roles in baseball, and we'll get into that. But I think the fact that you had all that well-rounded experience really makes you a valuable commodity in your role with social and digital, because part of that learning curve for some folks that come up in the social game and think about they're just creating content all the time, or pressing send on various tweets and Facebook posts and Instagram posts, is they don't necessarily think about how it all connects to the main business goals, and how this connects to email, which connects to commerce, which connects to revenue, which connects to partnerships, which connects to communications and team operations. And you got that because you spent time in all those areas and got to learn about it. So I think that makes you a better social and digital marketer today, because you can connect those dots. It's natural.
Yeah. Marketing there's so many things in marketing, and you ultimately, to get a job in sports, you have to be good at all the different pieces, or at least have an interest, especially when you're young, in learning whatever that is. Yeah. So yeah, if I could harp on anything, is like, kids just need to not get stuck in this like one idea of what marketing is or what social media is, and be willing to get different skill sets and things in their tool belt in order to make them more versatile. And yes, that might come at a cost of different unpaid internships, as sad as it is. And hopefully that can change. And that's a whole nother podcast topic that I think we could go on. But just like, how can you become the most versatile person? Because that's going to up your value, and people aren't going to want to say no to you when you have so many different skills.
Totally. Really well put. I want to hear about now, like when you start with the Rays and it's not an internship, you're going all in, you're starting with a team. What's that process like first to move from what you were doing previously on the brand side and getting to know a team? And yes, you mentioned that they don't have the history of and legacy of the Yankees or the Red Sox or whatever. And so there is the opportunity to kind of be creative and be original. So what was it like kind of learning the brand, learning how their team functioned, and making that mind shift go from, okay, I'm no longer selling supplements to customers. And yes, there's certainly social and community elements of that. But now we have fans and I'm selling emotion a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, you put it right there. Is one, how do we sell the emotion of what the Rays is? And how can we connect with our fans on that basis? And two is literally my one thing I did was ask questions. And you're coming in as a new person to a new company, and the last thing you want to do is feel like you're a burden by asking questions. But when you're asking it in a way that's going to help, and you're willing to learn something and do your research and try to get yourself embedded as much as humanly possible, as fast as possible, you're no longer a burden, because ultimately it's going to help you. So the big thing that I did was, one, my boss was there for 4 years at the time. And so really just trying to pick his brain a little bit on who are we, what do we do, and what are we about? And then how can we then like take all of that knowledge into like actually creating a strategy from it? Yeah. And yes, actually create a strategy from it, not just posting to post. And then two, actually just like trying to work with, again, the front office and the players, and then learning as much as possible, because again, it's their stories, not yours. It's not the Aaron show. It's not technically it's the Rays social show, but it's not. It's like, it's the Rays organization, and you're speaking on behalf of them. So what I really tried to do was just learn about what we were, and then try to put that in terms of social media content and digital marketing, and how that all can create actual storylines to what we do.
Yeah. And to hark on that point of aligning with what the team is about is so cool. Like one of the coolest things is when what the players are saying in the locker room, how the coaches are talking, when that echoes on the social media and vice versa, when everyone's kind of speaking the same language, like that's the golden standard that not too many organizations can do that, but it's super cool when it does happen, because it shows that authenticity when all of a sudden a player is doing an interview and he's saying the same slogan that is also the team's hashtag, for example, and it's like, holy crap, they're not just blowing smoke here, like this is really what the team is about. So what were the Rays about, and how'd you go about trying to convey that from a tactical perspective?
Yeah, I mean, all encompassing, if I had to like pick like one thing, is like I called us like the underdogs of the MLB world. And so then you're kind of like, okay, so you're the underdog. So like, what does that mean? That means like, one, we can be a little bit more snarky in terms of our tone. It means taking advantage of those big moments and making them probably bigger than they are. But like making the most out of like any of like the big and or small moments that happen to your team. Maybe it's, again, we have 162 games, but like if something happens, even if it's a midday game on a Wednesday, if something really major happens, like taking advantage of that moment and making it something big.
Yeah.
It means taking advantages of the rivalries that you have, and kind of blowing those out. Obviously Rays Yankees, that was like our big one. Obviously Rays Red Sox, but Rays Yankees was our core of like, okay, when we can, how do we voice that, and who are we? And then lastly, it was about like always being hungry. And that kind of turned into our campaign for the entire brand was like stay hungry. And then they made the postseason, but they didn't end up winning. So then into 2020 was all about, okay, well, how can we stay hungry for what we want, which is winning the World Series? And then kind of taking that general idea and then making content and ideas and storylines from there.
And I imagine that the fans certainly buy into that, but because I think as an outside observer, there is the narrative of the Rays are the ugly duckling sometimes, or the team that with the stadium that needs improvement, or the fans don't come to games enough, and all, like with that as kind of a backdrop or a framing, like do you almost use that, and is that part of the underdog story, and then how do you go about like amplifying that brand so that it gets fans to, yes, become emotionally invested with the Rays, but also at the end of the day, hopefully get more butts and seats as well in the local St. Pete and Tampa area?
Yeah, we use it, but it's not overusing it, right? It's about using it in the right times and also the right platforms. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, at the time, a big one for us was I pretty much obviously started the TikTok platform. And that was kind of, again, that's where we can be a little bit more fun, like let loose a little bit. And we really nodded to those pieces and kind of the receipt life of, if people say things, how can we kind of like poke some fun at that?
I remember a lot of that stuff.
But then we also did it in different ways, of course, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it might be, and doing it in our own way that speaks to those points, but it doesn't always have to be just like directly, if that makes sense. It's always just like that hidden note or hidden voice or tone that you're coming off of certain things.
I do want I spend just a minute on TikTok, because you did start your TikTok and you guys did do a good job. I thought probably better than most teams even today did a really good job of getting players to have fun with you. And it's something that you look at a lot of sports out there now, like on TikTok, they're just repurposing highlights in creative ways, but it's not really, the human part of it is missing a little bit. And I thought that was an early thing that caught my eye from your guys' TikTok back in those days. So tell me a little bit about that strategy, that development, and how you got to make it happen.
Is it weird that we're saying back in those days when it was a year ago? Like, I know it feels like a decade. Yeah. So like my whole thing with TikTok was honestly like the human element. Maybe it's voicing who we are as the social team, but obviously more is so like the players. How can we show their personalities? How can we have fun with the music and the culture than we can maybe on some other platforms? And how that voice came about was honestly, it's ever changing. But like our big end goal was be fun and be relatable. That was pretty much this is, if it's not fun, it's not relatable, it's probably not going to go out. And from there, we just kind of always tried to stay on trend, or we tried to stay in the moment of certain things. We didn't, obviously, it's great that the TikTok algorithm will always consistently push out content at different times. So your content will always be on, I guess, in a way. But I didn't want something that was like a week ago to go out. It still felt very timeline-ish to me. So I always tried to stay with that, be on top of trends. And then also like influencer marketing. I thought a lot of teams didn't take advantage in the space on TikTok, even though it's large and there's so many creators out there. And it's a lot different this year than it is last year. But when we were there, nobody was really taking advantage of that. So diving into our influencers and trying to make them a part of the content. And it's funny that you say players, because in 2020, we actually didn't have a lot of access to our guys.
Right.
So it was about being creative with what we could get. And then making it feel as if it was directly with our players, which is a lot harder than it thought of at the original time. But it was kind of like, how can we take a piece of content, but make it feel like our players are directly there with us, or that we were there in that moment filming it?
Yeah. And it's a whole other skill set too, to try to create for that platform. It was different. And something I've always admired about you, Aaron, and it speaks to how you came up as well, is you have been a go-getter. You have learned skills proactively. You have learned platforms proactively. So just talk about like, how do you go about learning a new platform? How do you go about learning a new skill? It's something that you like, do you write down, okay, I want to learn this. I'm going to go on YouTube and learn everything I can. I'm going to talk to people that know what they're doing. Or is there sometimes cases where I could learn this to be just good enough, but also there's going to be other people that I may need to bring in or work with our in-house team that are better at it than me?
Yeah. So like in terms of TikTok, it was kind of like I was interested in it and I loved it and I loved the platform. And then it was an opportunity for us and nobody else could really take it on, like work-wise. And so it was kind of like my baby. It was my project. So it was kind of like I had to do all of this in order to make it work. And that means learning things. That means, yeah, I absolutely 100% reached out to other people, not only in sports, but in other industries too, about TikTok and what I could learn from it. Maybe it was sitting in seminars. Maybe it was actually reaching out directly to TikTok. They have an incredible sports partnerships team. So really just trying to learn that and then executing it. I think that the downside is that a lot of people will learn things about platforms, but then they won't go and actually like execute it. And so I was super grateful with the opportunity to, okay, we're trying this. There is no failing on TikTok. Like, what if we went and tried this out? What happens? As long as we're in our guardrails and we're not making the brand look bad in any sort of way, how can we, make something different on TikTok and constantly just having the freedom to do that? And then when it comes to other skill sets that are just like simply job related, absolutely. I don't sit here and have like a to-do list by any means of like what I want, but if I need it or I want it, I will take the time to go learn it. And yes, that might mean less sleep. Yes, that might mean that I have to like take something else off my plate in order to take it on. But it's just about being diligent on how much do you care about learning whatever that skill is? How much do you care about learning something new to add and to be able to grow in your career? And a lot of that, it could come from YouTube. It can come from seminars. It can come from, a lot of it comes from my mentors and people in the industry. I take a lot of learnings from everyone in our world. And I think that that's what makes me the best is I'm not sitting here just looking at MLB. Maybe I'm looking at NBA. Maybe I'm looking at tennis. Maybe I'm looking at lacrosse. Maybe I'm looking at F1. Like, that world is crazy right now. I think there's just a lot of areas to learn and what people are doing well and just being okay with, saying you suck at something and getting better at it.
No, totally. And like one of my favorite things is when you see something really cool that someone else did is, okay, don't just say that's just really cool. Like, try to recreate it. See if you can get to the point where you can reproduce it or something close to it, then you're going to learn a lot along the way. And similarly too, when I see a campaign that's really good, I like to tell students as well as myself sometimes of, okay, how did this campaign start? Like, what does the campaign brief look like? What were their goals? What resources do they need? If you can start to recreate and reproduce those things, your skill set's going to grow quite a bit along the way.
Yeah. When it comes to like actual content creation, if like we want to dive into that, it's unbelievable the amount that I've had to learn in terms of, okay, you actually have to make stuff. It's no longer, okay, you have an idea. You want to create this graphic. Awesome. Cool. Well, guess what? If you don't have a team there to be able to make it for you, then you have to learn whatever that skill is.
Yeah.
So cool. I learned Photoshop. Awesome. Okay. Then I was finding like last year with TikTok. Okay. I have to be able to make TikToks. What does that mean? Oh, that means you have to know video editing. Oh, I didn't know video editing. I knew some like basic, like cutting highlight kind of things and being able to splice something together on an iPhone app. But it wasn't like major Premiere editing by any means. And I was like, okay, well, you're telling me that I can't go and use somebody else in order to make this, so I have to learn it. Okay, I'm going to learn it. And then being okay with sucking and failing at that and being not perfect and still like being able to make stuff and getting better at it and mastering it. I just think like learning, you're always going to be learning. If you're not learning something new, in you work in social media or content creation, if you're not willing to learn something new, like you're just holding yourself back because you're gonna have to keep learning and getting better and like leave your ego at the door. Honestly, like come into work every day saying you suck at it. Just do that.
Awesome stuff from Erin Hodges. Again, now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Follow along with her. You will continue to learn from her, be inspired by her. Just amazing stuff, and she's a great person to know in the SM sports space. Last up on the Best of Social Media Sports podcast, an amazing one to end on. You're going to hear part of my chat with Wayne Partello. He is now with Quento Marketing. He's the founder of Quento Marketing. They are an incredible agency, do good work in the sports space, in the brand space, and entertainment space, doing a great job with just building strategy overall. In this part of my chat with Wayne, you're going to hear about what it was like when he was building up an in-house media operation with the Miami Dolphins, and how the role of third-party media as well as in-house media really evolved and developed along the way. After the Dolphins, he went and did great things with the San Diego Padres, my hometown team, my favorite team. Just incredible stuff with Wayne. He has such good insight into the space overall. This part of my chat is a little bit longer because there was just so much good stuff. You're going to want to hear that full interview, but here's a bit of it. So here is Wayne Portello of Quento.
Yeah, so the Dolphins at that point had been purchased by Steve Ross, and they wanted, he wanted to build a best-in-class organization. I was brought in because as the team was negotiating their media rights, a lot of the dollars on the radio side started to kind of go away for NFL teams. And so there was you kind of needed to build your an in-house media team, which, back then, I've been a big Gary V fan since his, early days. And, he was talking about that way back then, right? Every brand's going to be its own media company. And so those of us who were on the media side, it was an opportunity to see what was going to come and realize that the day of sitting at a media company may not be the best place for you long-term, that the closest you could get to the point of, I always say, this is the line, the closer to the point of contact with the content is the key, right? So you could work at a radio station that covers the Boston Red Sox, or you could work for the Boston Red Sox, or, now we're getting to the next level of you could work for the players who play for the Boston Red Sox, right? The fans want access to the closest point of contact to the content. And so what we saw was this opportunity to leap from the media side to the team side to build that circle around the brand and tell stories and share the stories that, look, media companies as a whole have slowly dwindled in existence and in budget. So those who are still around don't have the budgets to travel like they used to. There used to be, a ton of media at spring training. There just isn't anymore. They can't afford it. And so teams have had to evolve, to provide access to that content. So shooting all the interviews for them, sending the interviews up. And so, all of that started to change. You could sit back and go, oh, feel bad for us. Nobody's coming to cover us anymore. Or you can help make it easier for those entities to cover you, and you can cover yourself. And so, when we first started to do it, traditional media weren't very thrilled with that because it was a threat. That's the other thing that people forget, is that the voices that you're listening to, everybody has an agenda, right? If you work for the team, your agenda is to make the team look good and to work your butt off to drive that for the team, right? That's your job. If you work in the media, it's drive eyeballs that drive impressions that drive revenue. Now, reporters, that's not their job, right? They're going to tell you that, but they are judged on driving eyeballs.
Totally. And
so, they can do it in a lot of different manner, and a lot of people do it in different ways. And there's no wrong way. I enjoy the game. You know what I mean? They're doing their job. I'm doing my job. And, I think that's the important part of when you start to build this in-house media. It's about storytelling around the story you want to tell.
It's not easy to build up those capabilities in house, and
no,
especially, even more so these days with so much video needs and different graphic design needs, and some people are going in house and a little bit of agency as well. Like, I guess for the Dolphins, how was that framed or viewed? Is this is a marketing expense, or this is going to drive revenue, or this is going to drive fan engagement, or this is going to help us control our PR a little more effectively? Maybe it's a combination of all of the above and then some, but how was it framed?
Yeah, it was really it was a pretty simple exercise. It was trying to replace revenue that was gone from rights fees. So you have this baseline, right? That was a guaranteed money every year that's now going down because the market had changed. And so it was okay, you're going to produce this content, and then they're going to try to sell it just like a media outlet entity. Right. And so, when we did the Dolphins show, that was Monday through Friday, 52 weeks a year. So 2 hours a day, 52 weeks a year, 5 days a week. And kudos to the team. We did that through some pretty lean years. We also did it through a lockout. We did it, we also turned it not just a radio show. We then added the digital media of video and a chat room, right? Way back then, 2010,
Hell yeah. You guys were ahead of it. So
we're doing chat rooms with fans real time every day, right? Then we added the video to the point that we got approved by Fox Sports corporate to stream it live on Fox Sports Florida. And that was a huge accomplishment. I mean, this was, for us, this was something when I got to Miami, and not just ownership was on board. They wanted to build the best in class. It was great. Leadership was on board. We had the resources to do it. Some employees weren't on board, right? They were like, no, there's no way. It's going to cost you $1 million a year. This many camera operators, you're going to need a floor direct, And we did it. We did it in Miami. We did it with 2 producers. So I had an audio and a video producer. The audio producer was more like a radio show producer. He was booking the show and handling the guest. And then the video producer had all robotic cameras, right? And was able to do all that. And so we started with just switching cameras and getting the cameras in the right position. Then we added graphics. Then we added B-roll over it from practice. We would put them all into sort of packages. And so if they're talking about a specific subject, we could then follow along. And so then when we got to San Diego and we were going to build the show for the Padres, we actually got it down to one producer producing audio, video in the element with graphics, with B-roll, with the whole thing, and communicating in real time with Master Control back in Houston for Fox. So it was pretty cool to pull off and to do, to use technology to give us the ability to produce that type of content.
That's and just so cool and so inspiring to hear that story of how it came together very successfully as well.
And just so you know, and just so I say it, it's not possible without incredible staff. Like Jesse Agler was the host of the Finsiders in Florida. We brought him out to San Diego because Jesse is just so good. He's so talented, and his ability to not only host a show, but maneuver it in a manner that he's giving that producer clues and cues to where he's going in advance, so that's how that works, right? They have to be in such unison to make it work. He's just an incredible talent, and I was really fortunate to meet him when I got to Miami. From the first time I met him, I knew that he was going to be our guy, and it was actually really really special to now to see where his career has gone and all the hard work he's put into it. He's an incredible guy, and I know he's the reason you and I met. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention him and just the slew of producers that we worked with through the years. We had our core group in Miami. We had a core group here in San Diego who were just super talented folks.
So you mentioned the value of having that great in-house team, having that great staff, and I want to touch a little bit on how maybe it's a trend or a practice, and maybe the pandemic exacerbated a little bit with budgets being cut. We're starting to see a dichotomy of more use of freelancers, more use of agencies. So some teams are going all in-house and doubling down and saying, we're going to build our own content house and podcast production company, all this stuff. And others are more, we're going to lay off more of our staff and just go on the freelance route or the agency route. From your perspective, what are the costs and benefits of each? Like, where do you see this going in the future for on the team side, at least?
Yeah, it's interesting. To be an early adopter on any of this stuff just costs money, because you're spending a ton, and the advertising market is usually 5 to 10 years behind the medium, right? So
no doubt.
Think about it, right? We were doing those shows, and we were really fortunate. We had some big brands in Miami step up. I mean, the Geico Comment Center, right? Like Geico stepped up in a major way and bought in on this concept that was light years ahead of where everything else was, right? You look at that today and you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you have a chat room on game day where fans are chatting with Agler during Dolphins games? Like, it was this whole concept, and they got it. And so, but normally there aren't a lot of major advertisers taking those types of risks. They want guaranteed return. They want, they don't need to be in the business of building your media house for you. Right. And so I think we were really fortunate with that. And I think a lot of teams, you see the majority in that space are taking their lead from a few. There are a few that push any area, right? So there's some teams that are really good at in-house media, and the rest of the teams will sort of let them kind of blaze the trail and then go, okay, that's what worked. That's the right vendor. All right, we'll all buy into that, right? Like Yin's Cam, right? When I was in the NFL, there were a couple developers trying to be the app developer for NFL teams. And everybody sort of figured it out. And then Yin's Cam did an incredible job, right? They weren't my developer. I went in a different route because I was trying to innovate. And I was like, all right, well, if they win, they win. But like, let's try to do some other things over here and then decide what's the right way to go. But they did a great job. And, then you just saw 28 teams sign on. And that's the beauty of that. So back to your original question, I think there's benefits to both. I think it's hard to be an innovator in the space of trying to show ROI immediately. It was tough for me when I first got to San Diego, trying to show ROI for the expenses I was throwing on social. Right. And fortunately, the world sort of started to catch up, right? Where all of the work we did to build audience in the social space was then able to be converted to ticket sales revenue because of paid advertising on Facebook and Instagram. Right. And so now you're able to go, remember the last few years of work to build audience. Well, now we have audience and now we can convert against it. And so that, we knew this, everybody knew the conversion was coming at some point. It was just trying to figure out where that was going to go. And so, it's an interesting space where decades ago, you needed media outlets to tell your story. You did. But if you're a sports team today, the Baltimore Ravens have a bigger following than any media outlet that's covering them in Baltimore. They just do. And so they have the ability, like the example I love to use, and it's my favorite from this offseason, was JJ Watt walks away, right? From Texas, from Houston. And there was no press release. There was no leak. There was no nothing. It was legitimately, he puts a post out on, and he explains it to his fans direct. Hey guys, here's what's going on. I love you, but I got to go. Right. Where in the past, he would have sat down with somebody, look at the decision with LeBron just 7 years earlier, right? LeBron sits down and does a huge ESPN thing. Great. But today he may not do that. He may just do it himself. It may be his production company doing it,
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a really interesting way to look at it. It is, to your point previously, the best way to reach people that were either a casual fans or the most people overall that would care to know about the Ravens, about JJ Watt, whatever it is, was not the team's website, was not the team's social media, but now it very much is, and then some. And so the media companies almost they need you more than you need them, as where it was vice versa, 25 years ago. Well,
in any business, right? And even with employees, relationships, and even in your personal life, relationships only exist as if they're mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
And so, they used to be, right, media and sports teams, very mutually beneficial, right? We need to help each other. And, now I think it was Mark Cuban wrote a blog. I think he got fined for it, where he asked the question why he allows, internet writers into his locker room. Yeah. It's a valid question, right? Like, I'm trying to build a championship organization, and your job is to drive page views and drive revenue. Why am I granting you access to my business? That's an interesting take, right? Like, it was somebody saying it. Like, I believe the media still has a huge benefit to the sports industry and to industry as a whole. Like, I really do, but I think that everybody has to continuously evaluate the benefits that you're bringing to each other.
Yeah. Everyone has their goals, and it doesn't mean they can't intersect.
No,
everyone does have their goals.
And look, I mean, there are stories upon stories of, people in, everybody's got an objective, right? And so it's just, as a consumer, there's a lot to be said about, that you now read a curated news feed, right? That you're constantly getting hit with the similar messages because they're coming from the same sources, because that's what you're seeing every day. And it's a really interesting time to watch that happen, because as you go through your, even my day, right? You're like, wow, all all right. So I've started to kind of pull in some other sources into my feed to just sort of get some other perspective on things.
Yeah. Well, I having a great conversation here with Wayne Partello, co-founder and CEO of Quento Marketing. I want to hear about those foundations of storytelling and use this as a jumping off point both for Quento and for the Padres. I mean, I'm a big Padres fan. People that listen to this podcast probably know that, a lifelong fan, and it was fantastic to see this brand become something really cool. And I mean, the Padres are now like your favorite player's favorite team, if you're not a Padres fan. And so I want to hear like what it was like coming to the Padres and having this task of we want to invigorate this brand. And it might have something to do with off the field stuff, with on the field stuff, some combination thereof. So just tell me about what that process is like from assessing where you're at, the levers you can pull to build that brand narrative, and kind of what the process was for you.
I think look, it was an incredible opportunity, right? I was 35 when I took the job. So that's pretty cool. And incredible, learning opportunity and experience just for business. And I joked with my wife, I said, look, if we get a call from Detroit to be a CMO, we got to go, we got lucky. We got to come to San Diego. Like that's a dream come true. So, when I first got here and you would talk to folks, I came from the media side of things. So I've always been really open, to discussion and dialogue and debate. I enjoy it. Right. I think that can be used against you at a certain point when you get to a certain level. And I had to learn that there was no win in debate, right? When you get to that level of fandom for a team, like you don't want anybody who works there telling you you're not right. Cause you are right. Like it's for you. That's your fandom. Like who am I to tell you? Right. But, I think for me, it was incredible. I thoroughly loved the organization. I loved every second I got to spend there. Great relationships across the board. I think for me, it was really listening and understanding who I needed to listen to. And it takes time. Also, you make a lot of mistakes when you're trying to innovate a brand, when you're trying to create and innovate at the same time, right? You're trying to run the day to day, but also drive it to the future. Yeah. And so you learn a lot there. You also learn that most people want to hold you to your mistakes and not realize that they're going to naturally happen, because it's easier just to pick out people's flaws. And once you can come to grips with that as an individual and go, okay, that's natural. I got that. And by the way, I'm going to make more mistakes, right? They're part, as long as I learn from them and we continue to drive forward, then this is working properly. So those are some sort of big takeaways. Yeah. I think the beautiful thing, that the opportunity that I had, that we all had in our time at the Padres, was that ownership believed in research. It's very easy for any owner of any company to say, listen, I'm the owner of this company and this is the brand that I want, make this happen. Okay. Like that's fine. I think I've talked to a lot of brand marketers that have that in their experience, in their business. We were fortunate that we had an ownership group that believed this was a community gem, right? And that we were just stewarding it for the community. So research was a major part of it. So to be able to go through the journey of that much research and be a part of that is pretty special. And
when it comes to that, are you looking at it of, hey, we want to research because we want to see what kind of brand is this, our fan base will be most receptive to? Or is it, this is the brand that we want to be, we need to figure out what the best way is to get fans to buy into that brand?
No, it was first you start with, because I talked about this in my early years, like, hey, we're doing research on brand. And if I said the word brand, and what I had to remember was that to a consumer, the brand is your hat and your uniform, right? Mm-hmm. But to a brand marketer, it's not. It's what you stand for. It's what you're driving towards. It's the guiding principles that help you make decisions on a given day. And so I had to, that was a lesson I had to learn later, right? But so I would use the word brand and I would, be laughed out of, meetings. Like, you don't have a brand, you work for the Padres, buddy. And it was like, no, but we're going to. And what you have to remember is that for me, I had to remember was that I was committing my life to this, right? This was going to be my everyday. I'm going to get this to where it goes. But that franchise, that they'd heard that song and dance a long time. So why should they believe me? Right. And so I just had to go do my job. And I think when that came to light, and so, yeah, it wasn't, this is the franchise we want us to be. We wanted to, ownership said we want to be best in class, all those great things. But what it really was this is where, this is the type of organization this community would be proud of. And as a brand, right, that we would do these things that, that we would be a place for families to come enjoy, baseball, the pride that San Diego has in Petco Park being one of the America's #1 ballpark, right? Like that's a real thing. And they should be really proud of it. They voted for it. It was, funded by this community, and this ownership group has committed to never make it look, less than 5 years old. So the amount of resources and dollars that they've put into the building should be commended as well. And so realizing that all of that was important, that you don't just spend the money, you make sure everybody knows that you're doing these things because that makes them proud of who you are too. And you want that. So yeah, you want to do the research and understand what matters to the community and make sure you're living up to it every day, and then go back and test whether the tactics that you're using are actually delivering up against the things that they said would make them proud.
Just amazing stuff from Wayne Portello. Again, it's like hearing a TED Talk almost. So inspiring, so insightful, so educational and informative. You should be following along with Wayne, follow along with Quinto. He has his own podcast as well. Lessons from sports business, lessons from sports marketing. So you're going to want to continue to follow along with him and everything Quinto is doing. Just awesome stuff from Wayne, and listen to that full episode for sure. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit of a bunch of conversations. You should always explore the whole back catalog. Just incredible stuff. It always blows me away, the people I've been able to speak to, hearing about people using these episodes, this catalog in their classes for coursework with professors and students. Just amazing stuff. I'm so lucky to be able to chat with all these people, and I hope you can feel the benefits of being able to learn from them. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening and downloading. As always, hit me up on Twitter, NJH287, also on LinkedIn, the website, dsmsports.net, and of course, follow along, subscribe, check out the podcast, whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horwitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.